Well, our next speaker is Waddell. I heard about him through Sunny. Surprise! She's shown me most of my world. In fact, I heard about him when he was trying to get Middlebury students to hear about his campaign, One Revolution, to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and hand cycle. And I was like, wow, when is that going to happen? I can't imagine how much prep that could possibly take. And then I kind of lost track of what he was doing. And then I looked on the website and he had gone and come back. And I just couldn't believe it. And so that was awesome. And now he's going to tell us about his adventures. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Chloe and Sunny, and thank you all for all the hard work. It's really a whole lot of fun for me to be involved in what's going on. And it's funny how things happen sometimes when you're not ready for it. It seems like there's a theme brewing here. But I had a bit of an epiphany. Chloe mentioned One Revolution. It's about 2 years old. This past year, I had an epiphany about what the thing was actually about. Been working on it for 2 years now. The realization was, wow, we're trying to gain equality for people with disabilities. Which was a bit of a shock for me because I never wanted to join that group. And I came back here and I tried as hard as I could not to join that group. And the biggest issue was about separation. And I felt like when I had my accident, that the risk that I ran was that I could be separate from my family, separate from my friends. And I've seen parts of this. I've seen the security guard at the MoMA who told me that I could not go up and down the escalator. Even when I impressed upon him that actually it's easier for me because I don't have the time getting onto the step. I roll on and I roll off. It's pretty simple. But yet, there's that expectation and there's that limitation. And some of this stuff is really difficult. There's a little girl that I ran into one time who I told her my story and she said, you know what, that's too bad. And she couldn't see any of the stuff that I had done, only the stuff that had happened, only the issue that had happened. And even on a tragic side, in a lot of ways, the guy who at one point asked me, so have you ever contemplated suicide? And when I said no, he gave me a look like, do you think you should? You know, maybe this guy knows something that I don't know. But you look at some of that, and so some of what I'm trying to do in that sense of separation is try to find a way to reach that honest voice for me. That honest voice for me is hopefully where, through being as specific as I can about myself, I can tell a general story. I had this past year, you know, and so you see things that happen. And this past year, I had an occurrence that happened. And a friend of mine, somebody who's worked closely on the foundation with me, said, well, come to this meeting and meet these biotech people. These people are working on some stuff, and it's great stuff, great technology. She was on the venture side of it. She was on their board. I went in, you know, put on a suit, which isn't something I do every day. Went in and met these guys. The meeting was great. I really thoroughly enjoyed these guys. The business guys, the science guy. I went into the science building twice when I was here, so I was happy that he could speak down to my level. And I understood what was going on. They were regenerating nerve tissue, which I thought was impossible. At least when I had my accident, it was impossible. So they're regenerating nerve tissue, and they've done some trials with mice. They cut the cord of mice, and they found a way to regenerate this, which obviously would have implications for people like me, would have implications for people with Alzheimer's, different things like that. And these mice, they could start to walk again, which was pretty amazing in a lot of ways. They could start to walk. It wasn't perfect. it wasn't perfect. You know, it wasn't like flipping a switch. It wasn't back to the way it was. When I broke my ankle as a 3rd grader, I didn't have to use my crutches all the time. I could hop around. I can't stand up and grab something on the top shelf. I can't put my chair in the back of my car and walk around to the front. This might be a way to cheat in some ways. You know, it's like, it makes it a little bit better, quality of life. Various other things, when you look at it, things like bowel, bladder, and sexual function could be improved. Huge thing that could change people's lives. I left that meeting. I went back to my rental car in the parking structure and took off my suit jacket. And I was totally crushed. I was totally crushed because there was a cure. I know you're giving that strange look, and it's good, it's good. We're gonna just keep up that. It'll be okay, it'll come back around, hopefully. Anyway, if it doesn't, it's my fault. But anyway, the whole storytelling thing, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, but I was totally crushed because there was a cure. What they were saying to me is, we can fix you. The greatest period of time of my life was the period of time immediately after my accident. There was no cure. I had to find a cure. And in finding a cure, I had to figure out that what I thought, what I felt, what I ate affected how healthy I was, affected my body. So this sense of a cure that they had created was a little bit different. I came back to school. I was in the hospital for 2 months. I came back to school here, and I had no idea what life was like in a wheelchair. So I went to a secondary rehabilitation place, a holistic healing, where they did a lot of body work, massage, Feldenkrais, Rolfing. They did traditional physical therapy. They did weightlifting. I went into the weightlifting the very first morning, and the guy who was the weightlifting instructor was a typical power lifter looking guy. I think he was 5'8" and 220, a huge. Big dude. Yeah, exactly. And so he said to me, so what do you want to do? And I said, I don't care what you do to me. I just want to get better. And he took me at my word. There were days that I was sitting there and I was doing bench press, and I was like, I couldn't believe that the bar was still moving. And he was, helping me enough to keep the bar moving, but just enough so that he kept me in abject pain as well, and tears just streaming down my face. But I went in at that point, and I went in thinking that I would walk out of there, that that's the ultimate goal, that that's becoming whole. And when I left, I realized that there was a whole lot more to being whole. That this sense of being whole was that happiness is probably the most worthwhile pursuit we can possibly have. That there's a way of finding that genius in all of us, or that genius that's outside of all of us, or however that went. I think it's inside of us, but then I've learned a little bit today as well. But at the same time, that was part of the recovery. That was part of what we were doing. The cure is partially in the struggle. And that's being alive, right? If we're going to struggle, we're alive. Our foundation, the vision of the foundation is, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. And what happened to me? I had a skiing accident. I had a skiing accident my freshman year here. I was a Feb Fresh, so I was just finishing my freshman year. First day of Christmas vacation, in the middle of a turn, my ski popped off. I literally just walked out of my ski, fell in the middle of the trail. I don't remember it. Nobody saw it. Broke 2 vertebrae. damaged the spinal cord, didn't walk as a result of the whole thing. In the hospital, went from 175 pounds down to 125 pounds. It literally, you know, I had started over. I was effectively an infant at that point. People ask me oftentimes, if you had a chance to go back, would you? And I've had to think about it. You know, I mean, this is something you should give real serious thought to. I've had to think about it, and I thought, I would not trade the person that I am, and I wouldn't trade the experiences that I've had for the ability to walk. It's funny the way that things go. I mean, when I was my fresh year, I clerked at a law firm in New York City. During the summers, I painted houses. I painted houses. My timer, I can't see what's on there. There we go. Thank you. Anyway, I painted houses when I was there. I mean, it's probably, think about it. I was more likely to go in the law direction than I was in the house painting direction, right? That was, as I was sitting there painting houses in the summer, like, this is the reason why I want to stay back in school, right? Because mind-numbing painting, I want to go back to school. This is it. Studying might be tough, but it's like, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. When I was in the hospital, people came in, and they kept saying to me, you know, you should get into computers now. Really? They're looking at me, they're going, well, you're sitting down. I mean, they're like, this is it. You know, I feel like Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate at this point, like, into plastics, whatever it is. But you look at it, and it's like, that's what they were telling me, is get into computers. And I'm going, huh. The funny part is the vocational change that they were talking about was exactly the opposite of what they expected. They told me, well, get into computers because you're sitting down. And what did I do? I went back to the very thing that put me in this sitting down position. I went back and I was a ski racer. When I graduated from school, there's no way that I would have competed professionally afterwards. I competed for 15 years afterwards. These are the zigs and the zags that you're talking about. You have no idea where you're going to end up. But at the same time, I looked at it and I said, wow, this is it. Some of that journey, I started this whole thing. The whole mission of our foundation is that we want to gain equality for people with disabilities. And this is like, and we want to do it by changing public perception and offering opportunities and mobility. So we're donating wheelchairs to people in developing countries. And you look at that and go, could you come up with a bigger mission? I mean, it's like it's not realistic necessarily, right? To be able to achieve something, to gain equality, it's like that's something that's probably unachievable. But at the same time, and then you're talking about 600 million people in the world, 54 million in this country, it's a worthwhile pursuit. But the other part of it is, that's exactly the same pursuit that we're doing on an individual level. That achieving that sense of purity, that sense of honesty, it's elusive. It's the kind of thing that we get for a moment and we think, oh, this is it. I have it. Where did it go? It's as a ski racer, you talk about the search for the perfect turn. This is our unicorn, you know, and this is it. It's the same kind of thing. So where that goal is so big about all these people in the world, that goal is also so personal. So I left that meeting, that biotech meeting, and I was distraught. I really was. And about a week later, maybe that weekend, I saw a buddy of mine, a guy with whom I'd worked, a guy who worked for a company that sponsored me. So we would do sales calls together, and I would present with him and all this stuff, and he became a really good friend. We were having lunch, and I said, this is what happened. I went to this thing, they told me they had a cure, and I was depressed. And he said, yeah, because that would make you just like the rest of us. And I guess that's the real question. Thank you.